So you won't learn 9 different procedures first. Then, so any procedure, it's all about you're dealing with data source. Where in some cases, data source readily delivered by SAP. In some cases, you have an environment where you generate out of it, or in some cases, you go out creating data source from the start. You deal with from the starting point. Yeah, that's all. But ultimately, any type of extraction, you go and deal with what? Data source. The next aspect, what you should deal for every 9 types you got, right? For every type, you should concentrate on this one. Next is delta mechanisms. Do you know what is delta mechanism? What is delta? Till now, when you've been extracting with flat file, you've been just seeing full. So when you say full, it extracts all the data from the source with respect to what? Data selections of the info package. That's what you've been using full. Now we should start focusing on delta first. Because if I do full, it keeps bringing the same data every day, which is of no use. Will it increase the data volume every day by day? So which will slow down my loading process. Instead of bringing the same data again and again, I just have to bring in only the new or changed records. Let's say I have 100 records now, I bring 100. After this 100, let's say next day they just created 10 new. When I do, the next day I just have to bring only those 10. That is what delta is. Okay. So next is, so data source will not give you delta as it is. You have to define a logic for it. So while creating data source, you should understand how do I enable delta for this data source. So when I say enabling delta, whether this, if this data source supports delta, it means what? You can do delta. If it doesn't support, then it is only full. And if it is supporting delta, you should also define the logic of the delta mechanism. What is the logic of identifying the delta records? Is what we call it delta mechanism. Did you understand the vocabulary was? You said, let's say you create one generic extractor from the start on the table. If you don't do anything, by default when you replicate, when you extract, it will be full always. And data. That is not what I wanted. What I want is I would like to enable this data source for delta. Let's say you say, okay, you select the data source, say enable delta. It will ask me, how should I find delta record? Blindly it cannot identify it. There should be some logic through which it can identify the delta record. మనిషి మనకు అనుకూలంగా ఒక లాజిక్ ఉండలేదు కదన్నా. ఇప్పుడు నీకు టేబుల్ ఇచ్చి కొత్తగా కనుక్కోమంటే ఏంది నీ పరిస్థితి, నువ్వు అడుగుతావు ఏందన్నా డేట్ని బట్టి కనుక్కోవాలన్నా, ఏదో లాజిక్ చెప్తే నేను దాన్ని బట్టి కనుక్కుంటా, అవునా కదా. సేమ్ వే యూ షుడ్ డిఫైన్ ఎ లాజిక్ ఫర్ ఐడెంటిఫైయింగ్ ద డెల్టా రికార్డ్స్. That is what we call it as delta mechanism. Did you understand this part? So for every extraction you are dealing with, we should also understand how do I enable delta mechanism for the extractors of the concept. How do I enable the delta, and for this delta, what is the logic of the delta mechanism? The two things we need to do. ఇప్పుడు ఒక డేటా సోర్స్ నుంచి నువ్వు డేటా ఎక్స్ట్రాక్ట్ చేస్తున్నావు, నీకు డెల్టా సపోర్ట్ చేయాలన్నా, డెల్టా సపోర్ట్ చేయాలంటే ఇప్పుడు 100 రికార్డ్స్ ఉన్నాయి, 100 వచ్చినాయి. రేపు పొద్దున 100 తర్వాత 10 కొత్త క్రియేట్ అయినాయి. రేపు పొద్దున డెల్టా కొడితే ఆ 10 రావాలి. సో ఆ 10 రావాలంటే నువ్వు డేటా సోర్స్ డెల్టా ఎనేబుల్ చేయాలి. డెల్టా ఎనేబుల్ చేసిన తర్వాత దానికి లాజిక్ చెప్పాలంటే ఏ విధంగా ఈ 10 రికార్డులు కొత్తగా అది ఐడెంటిఫై చేయాలి. మనం ఏం చేస్తామంటే క్రియేటెడ్ డేట్ని బట్టి కనుక్కుంటాం. ఆ ట్రాన్సాక్షన్కి క్రియేటెడ్ డేట్ ఉంటుంది, ఆ డేట్ని బట్టి కొత్తగా పాత కనుక్కుని అట్లా లాజిక్ పెట్టాలి. ఆ లాజిక్ని డెల్టా మెకానిజం అంటాం. ఏ లాజిక్ని బట్టి అది డెల్టా రికార్డ్ అని కనుక్కుంటుందో దాన్ని మనం డెల్టా మెకానిజం అంటాం. ఓకే బస్, when you said delta, you go to identify what is the new set of records what is going to come in, and with the delta mechanism you go to define the logic of identifying the delta records. That's very very important. Okay bus. Next is there something you should focus on, delta process. We should start focusing on delta process. Ante once by using a delta mechanism or logic, let's say you have identified a delta record, and how is this delta record has to be processed to BW. That is specified here by delta process. You getting what I'm saying? When I have a data source, and let's say I've enabled it for delta. When I've enabled it for delta, it means I would have specified a delta logic or delta mechanism was okay. By using that mechanism, it has identified the delta record. Let's say the 10 delta records it has identified. How this 10 delta records have to be processed to BW is what's specified by delta process. For example, let's say I have a sales order. Let's say I have someone sales order with value 1000 rupees. You loaded it. Now BW has got what? 1000. Tomorrow they have changed that value from 1000 to let's say 1500 in where in ECC. ECC change in record. Should I identify that in the delta? Let's say you already defined some logic with date or something. It has identified that as a change in record. Now it has to extract the delta change in record to BW. A change in record ela ravali. How the change in record has to be brought to BW bus. I give you two options. One is it identifies it as a change in record. Gives me the changed value. What is my changed value? 1000 is changed to 1500. It only gives me changed value bus. What is changed value bus? 1500. It gives the delta record as 1500. Already have a record in BW with what value? 1000. Now I am getting a record with the changed record as what? 1500. Add అయిపోతే ఎంత అవుతుంది? 2500 అవుతుంది. కానీ source లో ఎంత ఉంది? 1500 ఉంది. Should I add it? Overwrite. I should overwrite. So one delta process is giving you only after images. After image when there is a change bus. That is one delta process. There could be delta process like say now again I have got order number 1000, order value is 1000, again load into BW. Let's say now the order value from 1000 is changed to 1500 bus. Through some delta mechanism you have identified that as delta record and you are extracting the delta record. And when the delta record is extracted, let's say it gives you only difference. What was changed? 500. It only gives you difference. In that case, can I add up? So the only difference is in the changed value is in the and the delta process. The sales order with value 1500 is a change in record. It is delta record. This delta record అని గుర్తించేది డెల్టా మెకానిజం ద్వారా కనుక్కుంటుంది. కనుక్కున్నాక ఆ రికార్డు బిడబులోకి ఎట్లా వస్తుంది? మొత్తం 1500 అని వాల్యూ వస్తుందా లేదా డిఫరెన్స్ ఎంత మారింది? ఆ డిస్ప్లేస్మెంట్ ఎంత 500 అదే వస్తుందా అని చెప్పేది డెల్టా ప్రాసెస్. You getting this? If data source is enabled for delta, it means you can extract data through using delta update mode. If you are extracting data through delta update mode, how does it recognize delta records? Based on the delta mechanism. Once it has recognized the delta records based on the delta mechanism, how those delta records are processed into BW is specified by delta process. Yes. So whether does it, let's say that when 1000 is changed to 1500, does it give me complete 1500 or does it give only the difference? That is specified by delta process. So based on the delta process, you will determine the data flow in BW. Suppose if it is giving me changed value, అంటే 1000 నుంచి 1500 మారింది, ఓన్లీ చేంజ్ వాల్యూ ఇస్తుంది అనుకో, అప్పుడు ఏం చేయాలి? మనం ఓవర్ రైట్ చేయాలి. అప్పుడు ఏం వాడాలి? ఓడేసి వాడాలి, క్యూబ్ వాడాలి. ఓడేసి వాడాలి. ఓడేసి విల్ ఓవర్ రైట్. ఇప్పుడు నాకు when the value is changed from 1000 to 1500, it is only giving me difference bus. When it is giving me difference, can I add up or overwrite bus? Add చేయాలి. అప్పుడు ఏం వాడాలి? క్యూబ్ వాడచ్చు. అట్లా డెల్టా ప్రాసెస్ బట్టి you will be determining the data flow in the BW bus. Does it make sense? So as an architect, what they do, based on the business requirements, they will finalize about the data source which to be used. What all data source we need to use for this project. Based on the delta process of the data source, they will formulate the data flow. Then combine the queues with multi-report, then do report. Okay, boss. So that's what when I say, and then we should also get into another concept called enhancement. When I say data source, let's say discuss on a scenario where data source ready-made developed by SAP. When I say ready-made developed by SAP, the fields of extraction is also given by SAP. Let's say they have given you a data source with 10 fields, and I'm not happy with those 10. I just want to add up 2 more. I need 2 more extra fields. Then you go for data source enhancement. When we are not satisfied with the fields of your data source, you go about customizing it by doing data source enhancements. Clear? So for all these extractions, we should first learn the extraction procedures, then learn about how do I enable delta mechanism of this, and how do I understand the delta process of these data sources, and if I'm not happy with those data sources, how do I enhance those data sources? And if you're getting this is what 100% what we can look at from extraction from ECC. 99 good 100% this is what we should focus on.